Good morning, I'm Remo, and this is the Daily Signal for November 13th, 2025. We're starting with breaking news from India. A major terrorist attack has struck New Delhi's historic Red Fort, killing 12 people and injuring 45 others during a cultural celebration. Pakistani-linked militants are responsible for this devastating attack that's now pushing India and Pakistan toward a dangerous confrontation. This is developing rapidly, and here's what we know so far. But that's just the beginning.
Unfiltered. Now.
Here are 9 more critical stories breaking today that you absolutely need to know about. Breaking: Ukraine's government is collapsing as a massive $2.3 billion corruption scandal forces multiple ministers to resign. NATO membership talks are now frozen. Urgent: Pakistan retaliates with its own bombing in Islamabad, killing 15. Both nations are expelling diplomats as war tensions explode. Developing: Israeli settler violence spirals out of control. 7 Palestinians murdered in coordinated attacks as the government scrambles to respond. Crisis: 37 people are dead after a packed passenger bus plunged 100 meters into a Peruvian ravine. Brake failure caused this horrific tragedy. Emergency: Taiwan evacuates over 100,000 people as Typhoon Kompasu bears down. A state of emergency is now in effect. Catastrophe: Iran's worst drought in 50 years leaves 30 million people without adequate water. Protests and unrest are spreading. Shocking: a major bridge in China collapses into a mountainside. Infrastructure failure raises serious safety questions. Political crisis: UK's Labour government is imploding as Prime Minister Starmer faces a leadership challenge. His approval ratings have crashed to 32%. Chaos: climate protesters storm the COP30 summit in Brazil. Police deploy tear gas as security is breached. These stories are developing fast. Let's get the critical details you need to know. The terrorist attack at Delhi's Red Fort represents a major escalation in regional tensions. Pakistani-based militants struck during a packed cultural festival yesterday evening, detonating explosives that killed 12 innocent people and wounded 45 others. Authorities are calling this the most significant terrorist incident in India's capital in over a decade. What authorities aren't telling you: intelligence sources reveal this attack was months in the planning, with operatives crossing the border weeks ago. The Red Fort, a UNESCO World Heritage Site and symbol of Indian independence, was specifically chosen for maximum psychological impact. This could mean a complete breakdown in India-Pakistan relations. The Indian government has already launched airstrikes against suspected training camps, while Pakistan is mobilizing its military along the border. We're looking at the potential for the first full-scale conflict between these nuclear powers in years. The human cost is staggering. Families celebrating their cultural heritage became victims of international terrorism. This is happening right now as both nations recall ambassadors and India considers Article 370 military responses. A massive corruption scandal is bringing down Ukraine's government as we speak. 3 cabinet ministers, including Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov, have resigned in disgrace after investigators uncovered a $2.3 billion fraud scheme involving military contracts and EU reconstruction aid. The shocking revelations show shell companies linked to senior officials received massive contracts for equipment that never existed: fuel, medical supplies, and armored vehicles that were completely fictitious. Over 17 high-level officials are now under investigation as anti-corruption raids sweep through Kyiv and Lviv. But here's what's really devastating. Western allies are freezing aid payments, and NATO membership talks are completely stalled. The EU and United States are demanding immediate reforms before releasing any additional funding. Ukraine's war effort could be severely compromised just when they need international support most. This crisis deepens as we turn to the Pakistani retaliation that's escalating this regional powder keg. Meanwhile, another crisis is spiraling out of control. Pakistan has retaliated for the Delhi attack with its own bombing in Islamabad, killing 15 people and injuring 30 others at a crowded marketplace. Pakistani officials are blaming Indian intelligence agencies for this suicide bombing, creating a dangerous cycle of accusation and violence. The implications are staggering. Both nuclear powers are now expelling diplomats and recalling ambassadors. Military units are mobilizing on both sides of the border as emergency meetings are happening right now in both capitals. Sources confirm our worst fears. This could trigger the first major war between India and Pakistan since 1999. With both nations possessing nuclear weapons, the international community is scrambling to prevent catastrophic escalation. Adding to today's chaos, Israeli settler violence has reached a breaking point. A shocking wave of settler violence has killed 7 Palestinians in coordinated attacks across the West Bank. The most brutal incident occurred in Huwara, where a settler mob attacked homes with firebombs and firearms, killing 3 people and injuring 12 others. Over 20 violent attacks have occurred in the past week, including arson, shootings, and destruction of property. The Israeli government is scrambling to deploy additional military units, but critics say they're failing to hold settlers accountable. This is far worse than initially reported. The UN is demanding an international investigation as the violence threatens to derail fragile ceasefire negotiations. Regional war could erupt as Palestinian groups threaten massive retaliation. The situation is deteriorating rapidly as we examine the deadly bus crash in Peru. A horrific transportation disaster has killed 37 people after a packed passenger bus plunged 100 meters into a ravine on Peru's Pan American Highway. Brake failure on a steep mountain descent caused the bus to veer off the road and crash near Chimbote. Emergency rescue teams worked through the night to recover bodies and treat 18 injured survivors. Most victims were families returning from a religious festival, making this tragedy even more heartbreaking. The government has declared 3 days of national mourning as this disaster highlights serious safety problems in Peru's transportation system. This could mean stricter vehicle regulations are coming, but it's too late for these 37 victims and their devastated families. As I'm speaking, Taiwan is facing its own emergency. Over 100,000 people are evacuating as Typhoon Kompasu approaches Taiwan with devastating force. The government has declared a state of emergency, with schools closed and transportation shut down across the island. This storm is bringing torrential rains, landslides, and catastrophic flooding. Emergency shelters are overwhelmed as this is happening right now. Wind speeds are exceeding 150 kilometers per hour, with life-threatening storm surge expected. The crisis highlights increasing extreme weather in the region as climate change intensifies typhoon strength and frequency. In related breaking news, Iran is facing an unprecedented water crisis. Iran is experiencing its worst drought in 50 years, with reservoirs at less than 20% capacity. Over 30 million people face water shortages as some cities ration water to just a few hours per day. Protests and unrest are spreading as farmers and urban residents demand government action. The implications are staggering. Neighboring countries fear massive refugee flows and regional instability as this environmental disaster unfolds. This story is still unfolding as we turn to China's infrastructure crisis. A major bridge collapse in China's Sichuan province has raised serious questions about infrastructure safety. The Shuangjiangkou Hongqi Bridge collapsed into a mountainside after a landslide triggered structural failure. Officials had closed the bridge just 1 day earlier due to dangerous cracks. But this catastrophic failure highlights concerns about infrastructure in mountainous regions facing extreme weather and seismic activity. New details reveal this could be part of a broader infrastructure crisis as climate change stresses engineering projects across the region. Britain's Labour government is imploding as Prime Minister Keir Starmer faces a leadership challenge. His approval ratings have crashed to 32% after senior MPs publicly criticized his economic policies. A leaked memo revealed plans for public spending cuts, sparking outrage within his own party. Angela Rayner and Rachel Reeves are leading the internal revolt as calls grow for new leadership. This political crisis threatens Labour's ability to govern effectively and could trigger early elections. Climate protesters have breached security at the COP30 summit in Brazil. Indigenous groups and environmental activists stormed the venue demanding stronger climate action and Amazon protection. Police deployed tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse protesters, making several arrests. This security breach has disrupted international climate negotiations and drawn global attention to environmental activism. This is all part of a bigger picture. We're witnessing multiple global crises simultaneously, from terrorist attacks pushing nuclear powers toward war, to government corruption undermining international alliances, to environmental disasters affecting millions. These aren't isolated incidents. The connection is clear. Unstable governments, extreme weather, and rising tensions are creating a perfect storm of global instability. Ukraine's corruption scandal weakens Western resolve just as India and Pakistan edge toward nuclear confrontation. Climate disasters in Taiwan and Iran are displacing millions, while political systems collapse from Britain to Brazil. What authorities aren't telling you is how these crises feed into each other. Environmental disasters trigger political instability. Political corruption undermines international cooperation. Regional conflicts threaten global security. The stakes couldn't be higher. We're looking at potential nuclear conflict, massive refugee crises, government collapses, and climate catastrophe all happening simultaneously. This affects everyone because no nation can isolate itself from this interconnected web of crises. We'll continue monitoring these developing situations throughout the day. These stories are still unfolding, and the implications will be felt for months to come. This has been the Daily Signal. I'm Remo. Stay informed, stay safe, and we'll have more breaking updates as these critical stories continue to develop. Subscribe for immediate alerts because in times like these, every minute matters.
Unfiltered. Now.